Last week, we started talking about this idea of control that's shared. Share a lot of control with your kids, get a lot of it back. We talked about this passage from Titus chapter 2, where Paul says, "The grace of God that brings salvation has appeared to all men. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions, and live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age, while we wait for the blessed hope, the glorious appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ." And that idea that whenever God sets limits for us, and when He tells us that certain things are off limits to us, He doesn't just tell us the no. He tells us this is what is good for your life. This is what is beneficial for you. And one of the things that the choices within limits does is it helps our kids know where those limits are for them. Now, we're going to talk more about limits in a few weeks, but this is a good start because we get to set limits for our kids by the choices that we give them. In fact, I told you that you can tell what you're doing and how you're doing by how your kids respond. I know Jeffrey has a good story from this last week with his.
Oh,
why don't
yeah.
you share?
Oh no, we've been doing that. I love you too much to argue, and then as soon as I say it, he now reacts quite loudly.
Loudly
Is the nicest way to put that.
and he doesn't stick around. But there's no arguing.
No, there's no arguing.
Yeah,
Just go to the room.
there you go. Yeah. Anybody try choices this week? Giving extra choices? How did that go? See, if you start offering choices like that, it'll start making their heads swim. And they'll have to do a lot more thinking than you have to do. Now, you know that it's working when two things happen. Either your kids start pushing back because kids like normal, and even if normal is crazy, they will do what they can to bring things back to normal. And so sometimes they'll push against it and try to get you back into old patterns. The other thing that they'll do is they'll start using it on you. Lori was the one who started using it on me. In fact, I came home from work one day and she said, "Dad, where are we going for supper tonight? McDonald's or Burger King?" We went to Burger King because I didn't want McDonald's.
But you have to preface that we never ate out.
No, we always
We
ate at
never
home.
ate out when she was little. We never, ever ate out. So all of a sudden she comes home and she says, she figured out. Yeah.
Yeah.
She said, "We're going to McDonald's or Burger King." He said, "Burger King." I said, "How? What? Wait, how did that happen?"
It worked.
Wait.
Well, I didn't want her to use what were the choices on me. I couldn't handle that. So that's where we were. You know, it is this art of control. The parents need to determine who has the control now and understand how to give as much of it away so they can get a whole lot of it back. I told you sometimes the kids, they don't always like the new pattern that you give them. There was Tim. Tim loved to watch TV. That's what he did most of the day. He just loved, he had certain things on TV he'd like to watch. And so this particular day, Mom and Dad needed to go down and pick up Tim's sister from some kind of practice she was having. And so he came to Tim and said, "Tim, I tell you what, the car is going to leave here in about 5 minutes because we got to go pick up your sister. And we thought that we would go and get something to eat while we're out. But I tell you what, your choice, you can go with us or you can stay here and watch TV if that's what you'd like to do. Just thought I'd let you know." Well, 5 minutes passed, and it came time for Mom and Dad to go hop in the car and go get the sister. But before they left, Mom called out to Dad just loud enough for Tim to hear it. "Well, where's Tim? I don't see Tim." And Dad responded just loud enough so that Tim could hear, "Well, I guess he chose to stay here this time. So we'll just go get sister, go get something to eat, and then we'll be back." Out the door they went. Well, it wasn't long before here comes Tim. Jumps in the car. And they take off to get sister. Well, while they're going down the road, Tim's muttering something under his breath. And Dad says, "Tim, what's that?" He says, "I liked y'all better before you started all this stuff." And they said, "What do you mean, like us better before?" "Yeah, I liked it the old way." Dad said, I tell me, what was the old way?" He said, "Well, there'd been a lot of hollering and screaming, but at least I've been able to watch the rest of my TV show." no hollering, no screaming. So, that's the idea here, is to keep from the anger, the lecture, and the threats by giving choices, those choices within limits that we want our kids to be sure and pick. So Blondie asked Dagwood, says, honey, what do you want for dinner tonight? He says, how about chicken? She says, no. He says, steak? No. Seafood? No. Spaghetti? Okay. Comes back in and Cookie says, why'd you ask if you already had spaghetti made? And Blondie says, well, I want him to feel like he has some input. That's really important for kids. They need to know they have that input in their life, especially strong-willed kids. Strong-willed kids love control. And so the more that you can give control back to them, the more they will be easier to get along with. In fact, I wonder if sometimes kids, I was in a situation where I was not getting along very well with my supervisors. And I remember one particular meeting, we were sitting in this meeting and we were not getting anywhere because what they wanted and what I wanted were two different things. Our philosophy of things were kind of like this. And there was this moment where they didn't have one of my paychecks with them, but it was almost like they were dangling it in front of my nose. And they were saying, now, Dewey, you either do it our way or this could disappear. And I've got to tell you, at that moment, it was we had really, really young kids, and that little paycheck was going to disappear. And I realized he was right. I really didn't have any control. And I felt my chest get tight. I felt a lump get up in my throat. I thought, I have no control in this situation. Now, kids, whenever they feel a lack of control, they will do what they can to get that control back. They will yank on our leash. And it may not be really something that's comfortable for them, but if they can get things back focused on them and get you focused on other things other than what you desire and what you want, they get that control back. And that's one of the things that we got to be watching out for. I want to play this story for you. This one is by Jim Fay, and I love this story because it takes place in Texas. And I told you, Jim Fay, Foster Cline, they're the two men who put the language, the terms and stuff in Love and Logic. You got Charles Fay, who's Jim's son, who also joined him in the business. But this particular story is about a time that Jim had a speaking engagement and he had to pass through Texas in order to get there. So
I give about 300 speeches a year. The things that you'll see me doing most of the time is either standing in front of a group speaking, racing wildly to the next presentation, or standing out on the highway explaining it to some policeman. I had to figure out how to avoid the traffic tickets. I talked to my brother, and he can be kind of sarcastic. He said, well, it's easy. He said, if you just drive down the road and keep your eye to the right, you'll see big white signs with black letters in it. I said, I want something better. So if you'll remember, I talked to you about how do you avoid this and what's cops and robbers mentality and so on. And you gave me a wonderful technique that we best not tell everybody on this tape here, but I will tell you that I can come across like the most absent-minded old dude you'd ever seen in your life. So thankful that I get stopped. Otherwise, I could probably kill myself out here driving like this. Thank you. And I don't know if you know it or not, but I got 10 warning tickets in a row in this state.
Oh, is that right?
I thought I got it down tonight. Then I went to visit my kids in Florida, and I was driving through Texas. Well, I met a different kind of a state patrolman down there. I was once more standing out on the highway explaining myself to the patrolman. But this fine man put my moves on me so fast, I couldn't put my moves on him. He just wandered up to me kind of quiet-like, and he had a big smile on his face, and he put out his hand and shook my hand. He said, wow, Colorado license plate, you got to be on a trip. And I said, well, yeah, I'm on a trip. He said, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going to Florida. He said, well, why? I said, my kids live there. He said, well, that explains it. You were probably anxious to get there. And I said, well, yeah, I was kind of anxious to get there. He said, let me tell you why I stopped you. He said, the radar said 73 miles an hour. In this state, anytime it goes over 70, I don't have any choices. I got a righteous citation. And then he said real quickly, now don't feel bad. He said, you don't have to go back to the county seat and deal with this. And I know you were thinking about that. He said, but that's only one of your choices. And he whipped this letter out of his pocket and he handed it to me. And he said, let me give you this letter, because in this letter it explains several choices that you have. And he said, now if you look here, you'll see that one of the choices is go back to the county seat and get it over with. See the justice of the peace, pay your fine, then it's off your mind. And he said, now another choice is you can continue the trip. Forget about this totally. Don't give it another thought. When you're down to Florida, during the next 2 weeks, read through the fine schedule and you'll figure out how much money to send us. And he said, now you have a choice there too of either money orders, certified checks, or so on. Then he said, there's a third choice too. A lot of people like to contest these tickets. So you might want to consider that. If you do, we outline on the back side here all the steps in contesting the ticket. So you might want to give that some careful consideration. Then he stuck out his hand again and he says, I can sure understand a car like this getting away from me on these long stretches of highway out here. It happens to a lot of people. Now you have a good trip, won't you? I'm walking back to the car and I'm saying to myself, I trained that dude. So I'm not right.
And like that, you can't help liking him.
Well, I
Even though
love
you get
that guy.
it. Yeah. I guess the interesting thing is you still don't speed. It slows you down. There's no hard feelings. It's interesting,
He
isn't it?
really set some limits
Yeah.
for me about how I was going to behave myself in that state. Not only that, I got back in the car and I looked at Shirley and I said, I can't believe what I just did out there. And she said, what? I said, I just thanked him for the crummy ticket. But what he did was he had my head just swimming. He put several choices in my head and I was busy trying to say, am I going back to Vernon or am I going to go down there and play that? No, I better contest it. Then I'm saying, no, can't contest 73 miles an hour. And then I hear myself say, yeah, you better, there might be points involved. So busy with that, I couldn't put my moves on him. Not only that, feeling that I had some control over the issue, having great respect for that man.
We need control in the house, so how do we get control? Well, the way you get control is by offering choices. In fact, we know this in interpersonal relationships, or even, especially in situations where you've got a difficult conversation that you're having to have with somebody. You don't have control in that situation. You be the one that asks all the questions. If you can jump on it and you can ask more questions than statements, then more than likely you're going to have control in that situation. Well, this is basically what we're doing with the kids. We're giving them as much control as we can on our terms, and they're left with these questions. You're going to do this, you're going to do this. For example, how about this kid right here? He says, did you get your homework done, Lawrence? Nope. Boy, you're going to get it. He says, well, it's not my fault. I didn't get it done. It's my mom's fault. Now, how do you figure that? She forgot to nag me. What choices do is we put those choices out in front of our kids, and it keeps us from the reminder trap. It keeps us from the nagging trap. It keeps us from a lot of things. And what it does is it's giving control to our kids on our terms. So we talked a little bit last week about some of the guidelines for giving choices within limits. Let me give you a few more tonight as we talk about this and wrap it up some. First of all, always offer two choices. Choices have got to make you deliriously happy. I love that word, deliriously. It's got to make you just ecstatic. Either choice they make, it's up to, they can pick either one. Don't start giving choices you're not going to be happy with. Do you want to clean your room now, or do you want to do it next week? Well, if you're not happy with next week, don't give them next week. You can give it, would you like to clean your room this morning or this afternoon? Something like that. But they got to make you deliriously happy. It's kind of like Blondie comes into work, notices in his bathrobe, his pajamas. Mr. Dithers goes to his secretary, take a memo. All casual Fridays have hereby been canceled until further notice. Those choices did not make him deliriously happy. Now, there is always an implied third choice. Remember what the implied third choice is? Doing nothing? No. They've got to pick.
If they don't pick, you pick it for them.
The third choice is if you don't pick within a certain amount of time, and I don't have to give that amount of time, this is implied. If you don't pick within a certain amount of time, I get to choose this time. We're not going to wait around for a long time for them to make their choices and that sort of thing. We're going to Give them some time to make it, and then if they don't make it, I'll make it this time. Thank you for understanding. You'll get another chance later on. Now, what if they come up with, well, but I wanted this. But I wanted this. They offer a third choice. Then it's one liner. What were the choices? But I really wanted it. What were the choices? But I wanted to do, what were the choices? And pretty soon they get the idea that mom or dad means business, that there are two choices, pick either one of them, they make me deliriously happy. Any thoughts, experiences with
What if
that?
they give you a third choice and you're fine with that choice too? Is that, I mean,
Well, that's up to you,
does that
I
set
guess.
precedent or?
Depends on how often it happens.
Okay.
And it depends on if it makes you deliriously happy.
Okay.
Now, if they offer a third choice and it doesn't make you happy, no,
Yeah.
don't go with that choice.
If it's-
Or maybe you could save it for the next time, say, I really liked your idea. And so
We may
that's
try
one-
that
That's one
one.
of your choices today.
Yeah. If it's been a particularly good day, you say, you've done such a good job today, I think we'll go with your choice this time. Like Angela said, it just depends how often it happens, because if they can manipulate you with the choices and get your head spinning about all the different choices, it's kind of like me coming in and Lori saying, do you want to go to Burger King or McDonald's? Sometimes that's okay. Third, choices have got to be legitimate. You got to offer choices that they can actually pick from. Well, do you want to play with something here at home, or would you rather go see the Statue of Liberty in New York today? That's a little silly, but we sometimes start offering choices that we know that other choice is not possible. It's kind of like this guy. She comes in and says, you want chicken or pork? He says, pork. She says, let's have chicken. He said, well, why do you ask me? She said, well, I keep hoping you're going to give me the right answer. Give choices that are legitimate, things that you're willing for the kids to actually choose. So, must be legitimate. Got to be realistic, got to be reasonable, got to be attainable. The next, choices cannot cause a problem for anybody else in the family. Make sure whenever you're offering choices, it's not going to cause a problem for a brother or sister. It's not going to cause a problem for you. It's not going to cause a problem for the family dog. It's got to be a choice that is only going to affect that person. Choices need to be given with equal pizzazz. If I'm not somebody, I do not like tomatoes. So around my house, tomatoes were never a choice. But let's just say that I'm trying to give a choice. I say, hey kids, you want carrots or you want some tomatoes? They will pick up pretty quickly which one you don't like if you don't give equal pizzazz to both choices. Which one of these you want, either one, and as long as it makes either one of them makes you deliriously happy, then you can give both of them, saying, you got the inflection of your voice, the tone of your voice, the way that you say it, all those things have got to indicate, hey, either one of these choices are fine with me, you just pick whichever one is best for you. You go right ahead. Offer choices when things are going well. This is the thing where sometimes we forget. Oh yeah, I've got to offer choices and limits. And you wind up telling your kid, do this. And they start getting into like a real argument with you and you say, okay, well, would you rather do this or do this? Don't start offering choices after the things heat up. Who's got control then? The kid does. So always offer those choices when things are going well, when things are calm. That way, you have an opportunity to give the best choices. The kids have the opportunity to to choose the best choices. Be careful of this one. Care should be given not to disguise threats as choices. Choices are not options in punishment. All right? Would you rather clean your room or do you want to be grounded for a week? That's a threat. That's punishment. Choices are intended to be just that. They are options between different things that will achieve a similar goal. It is not to be your way of trying to get your way with your kid. There'll be real life decision-making opportunities. It's kind of like this guy here. Michael, you can see I'm busy. Why don't you go outside? He says, nah. His mom says, well, put it this way. You can either go outside or you can clean your room, vacuum the stairs, and empty the dishwasher. He goes away and says, that's not a choice. That's a sentence. Kids can tell the difference whether you're giving them legitimate choices or not. And finally, when deciding to give choices, parents should just choose on issues that are big. Kids are allowed to choose on things that are manageable. Kids are allowed to choose things that affect himself, herself. When it affects the whole family, that becomes an opportunity for you. Now, you can have a family meeting, you can have a discussion about, well, what do y'all think? Y'all give us some input. What should we do about this? You know, do you like us to, would you want us to buy the red car or the blue car? You know, would you like us to go to Florida or go to California for vacation this year? I mean, you can have those family meetings and get their input stuff, and then you, as the parent, can then make the decision that's going to affect the whole family. But when it comes to individual choices, okay, we're going to go to Florida this year for vacation. Now you get to choose. You want this suitcase or that suitcase? Do you want this shirt or this shirt? Do you want, to take this or that? Then you can start giving them all sorts of choices leading up to those things that you've already made the big decisions on. Give them choices within the scope that they can manage. What are the thoughts, questions about choices that you got? I tell you, this can become a really powerful tool if you'll just start coming up with as many little choices as you possibly can.
And give them a lot of choices. And when it's your turn, then you say something like, you have been choosing all day, it's my turn, I get to choose this one. And they're usually okay with it. But if you're the one making all the decisions all day long, they feel like they don't have any choice at any time.
That's true. Kids will share control. What becomes a problem is whenever they feel like they have no control. Do you see some of the other choices on the yellow sheet here? Would you like to wear your coat or carry it? You're going to clean the garage or mow the lawn this week. We have these chores done tomorrow. Well, you need an extra day to finish them. You're going to have carrots or vegetables tonight. You can see some of the different options that are available. Now, how do you word them? Well, it's up to you. Here's some thoughts. You could say, would you rather this or that? You could say, what would be best for you? This or that. I really like this one because one of the things with offering kids choices, remember, one of the things we're trying to do with kids is we're trying to give them as many real world opportunities to experience what real world is like at home when things are pretty cheap, whenever things, the consequences are really cheap, whenever things are safe. Before they get out in the real world. And so one of the things we want to teach them is when you're making choices, when you're deciding between things, decide what's best for you in that situation. What's going to be best for you in this? Or if it's a situation between two good things, which one's going to be better for you? And so give them some practice and give them some terminology that really helps them key in on that concept of when I've got choices between things, I need to choose on what's better for me right now. Do you want to spend your money on this, or would you rather, or would it be, what would be best for you, to spend your money on that toy or to save it for something bigger later on? Those kinds of choices. Feel free to this or that, or you could say, what would help you most? This one or that one. Angela's right. I mean, would you say that sometimes you just have to be the boss? There are just sometimes, as parents, we've got to be the boss. And so the concept that you're about to hear about is this idea of making deposits into an account. And that's an account of choices. So listen to how this dad did it with his kids, and see if there's something in this that you could do with your kids as well.
Well, doing a workshop one time with a bunch of parents talking about choices. And I was talking about the fact that you don't try to give choices when you're upset with a kid. What you do is, you do it like a bank account. You know, you give little choices when everything is going really well and you're feeling comfortable and it's easy to think about and nothing's going wrong. And you make tiny little deposits into the account every time you give a kid a choice, like it's a control account. And you build that up. Lots and lots of little choices, never big ones that affect anybody else. Because kids have a lot of choices they can make about things that don't affect anybody else, right? And then when you get that account built up, you can take a withdrawal. And a withdrawal sounds like, aren't I usually pretty reasonable? Don't I usually let you decide things when I can? I do, don't I? Well, it's my turn this time. Thanks for understanding. And then we make the big decisions that want to affect other people. A woman came up to me after the workshop and she said, Jim, you are so naive. I said, oh, really? Tell me about that. She said, yes, you're naive. You think that control is control is control. I said, what do you mean? She said, well, you think a kid is just as happy with a little choice as he is with a big choice. Now, what's your thought, audience? See, the issue, that's true, because the issue is not how big the choice is. It's whether or not I get bossed around. That's the issue, right? Kids are just as happy with a little choice as a big one, just as long as they can say, oh, I get to decide. And so I said, yeah, I believe that that's right. Little choices do it. She said, so any little choice might serve as a deposit? I said, yeah. She said, well, how about this one? You want to wear red socks or blue socks? Would that be a deposit? What do you think, audience? Yes. Do you want to put your pants on first or your shirt on first? Yeah. Do you want juice or milk? What about if you say, hey, drink your milk, and then the kid says no, and then you say juice or milk? Yeah, sound like a wimp now, right? Yeah, okay. Well, she said, how about this? Do you want to go to your room with your feet touching the ground or not touching the ground? What do you think? I said, yeah, that sounds like you got it. She said, well, what about this? Would you like to eat what's at the dinner table, or would you rather wait till breakfast and see if you like that better? She had a friend with her. Have you ever met these people who always want to make everything their problem? This lady is, oh, sure. Then the kid's going to be hungry. Then she's going to be whining. Then she's going to be carried on. Then it's going to be your problem because you're going to be miserable. This person turns around and says, get a life. I heard this lecture. If that kid wants to give me a hard time, I'll just call up Mabel, the babysitter from hell. She can come over there. The kid can pay her to listen to that. I'm going to movies. Think she's getting it? I said, I think you've got it. She said, and if I do that, little tiny choices like that, build up the savings account, then I can boss my kids around? I said, yes. Because do we have an obligation to boss kids around from time to time? Yes or no? Absolutely. I said, all right. She said, well, this is really disappointing. I said, why? She said, I have to go home and apologize to my husband. What? I've been calling him a wimp. I don't know how many times I've said to that man, be a man for crying out loud, stand up to those kids and tell them what to do. Get sick and tired of all this, you decide stuff. Of course, she didn't say stuff, but it had a similar initial consonant. She said, oh, I'm giving all those choices. She said, after your lecture tonight, I figured out something. He's a master of the savings account approach. Now I understand why the kids behave so much better for him than they do for me. He's always sneaking around the house, trying to get these free deposits. Yeah, I saw it the other night. Right in the middle of their favorite television show, he stands up and says, okay, turn off the TV, time to go to bed. Oh no, the show's not over. We want to see the end of the show. Can't we see the end of the show? And he gets real tough. He puts his hands on his hips and he says, look, do you guys want to go to bed right now? Or do you want to wait till this show is over? Which is it? And they said, well, we want to wait till it's over. And he said, well, you got to decide things like that. It's important. Did he get a free deposit out of the account, into the account there? Yeah. So after the show is over, he gets some more deposits. So we want to pile these up and pile them up, right? So he says, guys, you want a drink of water before you go to bed? Oh yeah, gotta have water, He said, okay, you're gonna have to decide again. You want kitchen water or bathroom water? Which is it? And then they had to decide, did they want it in a cup or in a glass? They had to decide about straw or no straw. You want to piggyback ride to your room, or do you want to walk on your own? They wanted a piggyback ride. He said, good decision. See how he keeps using those words and throwing those in there? And then he said, now, you going to bed with a story or without a story? And he said, story, we got to have a story. He said, good decision. He read him a story. They had a great time. And when the story was over, he thought about giving them some more choices. But these deposits that he's given, are they good just for tonight in this situation, or will they last for a while? Which is it? They'll last, absolutely. So might as well get some more. Okay, you want to go to bed with the light on, light off. Door open, door shut, covers on, covers off, and music on, music on. By about now, they say, but we don't want to go to bed now. We want to be up with you. We love you. And that's when he took his withdrawal from the account. Wait a minute. Who's been making all the decisions around this house tonight? You guys, right? Don't I get a turn once in a while? Thanks for understanding. Go to bed.
See how that works? Put as many of those little deposits in there as you possibly can. Give kids a piece of control on your terms. You're going to set the limits, and they get to choose between those limits. Now, understand, choices are always going to keep safety in mind. You're not going to start giving a bunch of choices that's not going to be safe for the kid, either physically, psychologically, emotionally, all those kinds of things. It's always going to be related to safety, and that's what you got to be able to do. All right. Now, here in a minute, I'm going to tell you how to give a lecture to your kids. But any other questions about this one? Okay, because we're gonna talk about it's an issue called problem separation, and it's very similar to the idea of giving choices within limits. But the idea here is we're trying to help our kids make healthy decisions for themselves. That's ultimately what we want them to do. We want to give them as many little choices all along the way while they're growing up so they become used to making choices. They can make those decisions. Like I mentioned last week, you know of adults who they're paralyzed when it comes to making a choice about anything. And some of those is because they never had the opportunity to make choices growing up to see how those choices work out. So what we want to do with our kids is to give them as many of those choices along the way so that they can make those healthy decisions for themselves. Problem separation is another way that we help kids develop this ability to make healthy decisions for themselves, or what I'm going to call it is how to give your kids a lecture and get away with it. I told you, love and logic, one of the rules is that we set healthy limits for our kids without anger, lecture, or threats. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about lectures in here because sometimes parents just got to do it. But you got to be careful about some of the control mechanisms we use with our kids. Be real careful when you say things like, it would really hurt me if you did this. I would be so sad if you made these choices. Oh, I would be proud of you whenever you do this. Now, what is the problem with putting all those emotions and all those things on yourself rather than on your kids?
About you.
Yeah. You're making it all about your feelings, your emotions, your reaction to something. And that works out okay as long as the kids care about your reaction to something. But one of two things is going to happen. Number one, they're going to get to the point where they're going to have one of those days where I don't care what mom or dad say, this is what I'm going to do. Or you're not going to be around, and so you're not going to know what you do or what they do. And so they don't have to worry about your reaction. And so it's really important to maybe use other language like, this would be best for you, or this is what I think is helpful for you, or doesn't it make you glad when, or does this make you sad whenever? And so really put those emotions back on themselves so that as they assume responsibility, as they get older, they take on that responsibility and can lay those consequences there on themselves. They can be taught in their decision making that when they make a decision, they are the ones that experience the consequence, not you. Now, that's only partially true because those of us who are parents know that when our kids make have SLOs, significant learning opportunities, it hurts us too, doesn't it? Yeah. But we need them to know that when they make a decision, when they make a bad decision, it's going to make their life sad, not our life sad, so that they can make healthier decisions. And that's important as they're getting older. Notice how God did that for us. Deuteronomy 30, this is in Moses' farewell speech to the Israelites as he's about to turn the reins of leadership over to Joshua. He's about to go up on Mount Nebo and die. He says, "This day I call heaven and earth as witnesses against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses." And notice what he says, "Now choose life, so that you and your children may live, and that you may love the Lord your God, listen to his voice, and hold fast to him. For the Lord is your life, and he will give you many years in the land he swore to give to your fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." Do you hear the language of choices? That's what God did. And then as Joshua ends his time of leadership, he says something very similar. "Now fear the Lord, serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your forefathers worshiped beyond the river in Egypt, and serve the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you're living. But as for me and my household, we're going to serve the Lord." This is those choices. So, how do you give a lecture to your kids about choices and get away with it? Some of us get the idea that the way you give a lecture is that you start talking, and our kids will finally hear us if we'll just talk long enough. Did your parents ever do that for you? And I know if you're sitting here with a parent, you better be careful. Yeah. I talk. Who was I talking to recently? I was talking to somebody recently, and that was what was happening at home. Mom would get into a lecture, and 4 hours later, she would just about decide that she had said what she needed to start saying and really get into it. And of course, what happens to a kid whenever you start a lecture like that and just keep going on and on and on? Yeah, it becomes a Peanuts moment. Wah, 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 wah. Just, oh, can we stop? Just shoot me. Just put me out of my misery. They stop listening. So it's not that the longer you talk, the more effective you are. So what is it that will make it effective? Questions. Questions? Questions is good. Remember, that helps keep control. There's also something else that will help. I'm going to give you 5 steps. 5 steps of problem separation. How to give it. Now, this is especially true as your kids get older, especially for teenagers. This will also work with adult children, by the way. They will learn to listen a little bit more carefully and more willingly whenever you try these steps. As they're younger, you can do this with younger kids too. It's just going to be watered down quite a bit. But here's the 5 steps that you want to take if you want to give a lecture to your kids. Lay those choices out there for them and get them to listen. Step number 1 is a question. How do you feel about this? Have you got certain issues that you would like to deal with your kids? What are some of the big hot buttons that you want to be able to share some of your wisdom with your kids?
Screen time or TV time.
Okay, screen time, TV time. You don't want to fall into lecture mode, but they need to know some things about that, okay? What else do you want them to be able to know from you? Things that you've learned.
Friendship choices.
How to choose your friends, who you're going to hang around, who you're going to let influence you. Some of those big hot topic things, whether they're going to drink or not, whether they're going to take drugs or not, whether they're going to have sex before marriage or not, whether they're going to do their best in school or not. I mean, curfew is a good one to have a discussion like this about. Just think about all the lectures that you want to give to your kids. Those are the hot button topics. Think about the lectures you used to listen to. So you start out with this question. How do you feel about this particular topic? Then what are you gonna do? You're gonna listen. Because kids won't care what you have to say about something if they don't feel like you care what they have to say about something. But when they know that you care about them first, they're gonna be more likely to listen to what you're gonna tell them. I did say more likely. But they wanna know that you care. How do you feel about this? Now, when you start asking that question, what are your kids gonna do?
I'd always clue me in on whenever we were about to move, my dad would ask, how do you feel about whatever state? So he said, how do you feel about California? I'm like, I think we're all gonna get shot. But yeah, he'd always say, how do you feel about whatever? And that's my clue in to tell the rest of my siblings, hey, start packing.
Start figuring it out, don't you? Yeah. Now, kids could have a number of different reactions to that. I mean, number one, they may respond by telling you exactly what they think. And that's great. That's what you'd like to know. You want to know what's going on in that head of theirs. And so they might tell you exactly what they think about something. But there are some kids out there that they like to get a reaction out of mom and dad, don't they? And so they may tell you something that they know that you don't like, and they really don't like it either, but they just want to see how you're going to respond. That's where it's really important as parents that in order for this to be effective, you just got to listen. That's interesting. Thank you for sharing. So that's a really good one. Thank you for sharing. Oh, thank you for sharing. And inside, you can crumble. Later on, you can go behind the closed door and cry, whatever you need to do. But, oh, well, thank you for sharing. But you're going to start, you're going to listen. Or if they, if they don't play devil's advocate or they don't tell you exactly what they think, they say, I don't know. Well, then you can go to the route. Oh, no, really, I want to know. What do you think about that? I don't know. Now, sometimes it's, especially some topics, it can be pretty intimidating, can't it? I mean, especially if you're doing like a hot button topic like sex. I mean, one of those kind of topics is kind of embarrassing. It's kind of really intimidating. I'm going to have this discussion with you. Ooh, gross. So you may change the language up a little bit. You could say something like, how do your friends feel about this? You know, it's been a long time since I was 13 years old. What do other 13-year-olds feel about this? And if you can get them talking about other folks, you may actually get a look into their heart about how they feel, how they're feeling about something. Or as they share what their friends or what they or their peers or what people at school they don't even care about, what they think about something, it may open a door to say, well, is that kind of how you feel about it? And if they see it's a safe door to walk through, they may go ahead and walk through it. But you may start the conversation talking about, what do other people say about this? And that may give you an opportunity to get a glimpse into what's going on in their head. So step number one, how do you feel about this or that? Step number two, then you ask, can I tell you what I think? First, I've listened to them. I've listened to their thoughts, their feelings, their heart. I've listened to their opinions, what they hear from other folks. Now ask the question, can I share what I think about this? Now, what if a kid says, I really don't want to hear it? Now what do you do? See, this is one where you may have to say something like, oh, well, okay. I tell you what, this is a really important subject, so I'd love to talk about it sometime. When you're ready, I want to talk about it. And then drop it. Now, again, sometimes a kid will come back and say, well, you know, what were you thinking about this? You may get their curiosity up where what were they going to say? What are they going to do about this? And so they'll come back later and ask, you know, Mom, what were you going to say about that? Other times, if it never comes up, and this is a really important topic that you want to talk about, you can always come back later and say, hey, you know, we started that conversation the other day. Would it be okay if I tell you what I feel about it now? And given the right circumstances, they will finally, more than likely, come around because you listen to them. Most of the time, they'll listen to you. Yeah, I'll listen to what you have to say. So that goes to step number 3. Now, this is where you've got to do your homework. Here are the facts. It could be drinking, what alcohol does to the body, what it does to the brain cells. It could be taking drugs and the similar kinds of things. It could be curfew. You know, I want to talk to you about curfew because I've done a little bit of study about this, and I just need to know how late are you going to be when you're supposed to come in before you want me to call the police? Because, you know, you could be out on the side of the road after an accident or something, and you could be bleeding out there. And what I've read is that somebody could bleed out, you know, and be unconscious and die within 8 to 15 minutes after an accident like that. So I just need to know, how soon should I be worried before I call the police or something like that? Just curious, and so you get your facts together. You know, with you know, I've on premarital sex and stuff. Statistics show that kids that get pregnant as teenagers, they got a higher chance of not going to college, of not finishing high school, not getting their education. And more than likely, most of those kids wind up living in the poverty level. I mean, they never scratch out of that. And so you kind of go into some of those facts, and you're going to kind of collect those facts as much as you can. You know, with your friends, as you're picking friends, you know, one of the things that I've noticed in other people's lives and in my own life is that it's much easier for friends to bring you down than it is to pick you up. And so I know some folks, you know, and some stories where, you know, a kid was in the wrong situation at the wrong time because the friends that they picked, and, you know, the friends did a crime and they were caught up in it. So you go into all sorts of different stories and different facts, but this is where not going to get a lot into feelings at this point. These are the facts. This is the research I've done. This is what I know about this topic, and give them as much of that as you can. So what do you feel about, can I tell you what I think? Well, here's some things I've learned about this. You can even share some personal experiences about it if you want. This is what happened to me. So that's the nice thing about this, is some parents don't want to have those conversations because they realize they messed it up. They didn't do so good. They don't want their friends or their kids throwing it in their face or saying, well, look what you did. Why can't I do that? I said, you're right. I was hoping that you wouldn't make the same mistakes that I made. By the way, if they sit back here on this one, how do you feel about if they say, well, I don't know. You say, well, what do you think teenagers ought to be able to drink anytime they want to? Well, yeah, I think that'll be. Then you can kind of go there. What if they say, well, I just really don't know? And they say, well, that's good that you don't know, because if you did know it, it'd really scare you. You know, you have some fun with it too. Let me know whenever you do know. I'll wait. So here are some facts. After you share your facts, now you're going to ask another question. How should I respond if you choose in whatever the wrong thing is? You know, drugs are one of those things that they start eating away at your brain cells. And there are some drugs out there that the dealers, they will put the impure stuff in with the drugs that they sell. And there's lots of stories out there of people that have taken this and it just automatically kills their brain. And a person winds up in a hospital somewhere, and they're wearing diapers and they're drooling and they're having to be fed, they're having to be clothed. I mean, they can't do anything for themselves. That's just facts. That's just what happens to some people whenever they give themselves over to drugs like that. I just thought you need to know something like that. Now, how do you think I should respond if you choose to go ahead and take drugs? How do you get the kid to start thinking? Because now it's getting them to think about what are the consequences if I were to choose this negative thing for my life. And so some kids might say, well, you know, I'd expect you to get the best care you could for me. I mean, I'd expect you either, if you couldn't, move me here in the house and get me set up in here, or at least get me a good a nursing facility someplace where they're really taking care of me and they're doing what they can. So I expect you to take care of me. Then you get to drive it home with, well, this is what I will do. Well, you know, you've got 2 other siblings. And you really think it's fair that I take all the money that we have to raise them and spend it all on your care? You know, I'll do what's needed for you. Now, I'm always gonna love you. I'm always gonna be your parent, regardless of what decisions you make. I'm always gonna be your parent, and I will provide what I need to for you. But I'm not gonna spend all my money on you whenever your brother and sister over here also need my help with some things. So just to let you know, this is what I'm willing to do. Well, you know, if I get pregnant, I kind of expect to be able to move in here at the house and be able to live here and be able to, and that you'll take care of us and you'll help me go ahead and get through college and all that stuff. Well, I'll tell you what, this is what I will do. Then you decide what you're willing to do. Because the idea of this is you want to give them, it's their problem, and they've got certain issues and certain decisions that they've got to make based on that problem. And they've got to be able to see, okay, if you choose the wrong thing, here are the consequences that come with it, and this is what I'm willing to do to help you out with those consequences. That is one way to give your kids a lecture and actually get away with it, because it's more of a dialogue. It's more of, I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to hear what you have to say about this. Listen to what I have to say about this, and let's talk back and forth rather than I'm the only one doing the talking and I'm expecting you to keep your ears open the whole time that I'm talking. Thoughts, questions?
It's hard not to lecture. I keep getting into it. You've got so much to say. You have all this wisdom.
Adam does this. Adam do this. Whenever I start on anything, he'll go.
Well, they got the earbuds, okay, go ahead and talk. Lecturing is one of the easiest things for we as parents to do. You're right. I think it must be instinctual. In fact, we'll hear a story later on. One of the guys will talk about a story and says, there just comes a time at a certain point in life where it's kind of a little switch that turns on in your brain and the lectures just start flowing. You know, he said, I'm never going to do that. And then all of a sudden I'm hearing my dad come out of my voice, and it just comes natural. But you're right. There are a lot of lessons that we have learned growing up and into adulthood that we want to pass on to our kids. The question is, how can we do that and do it most effectively? And it all gets back to control. If they feel like they are a part of that conversation and have some control over it, then they are more willing to be a part of that conversation than if it's all one way and I'm stuck. There's no way to escape.
The facts can't be a 20-page research paper.
You mean this particular step can't be the 4 hours? No. You gotta be able to condense it. The Reader's Digest version. Everybody know Reader's, you know Reader's Digest? Okay. I gotta check every once in a while. I found myself as I've gotten older using examples, and I've got people looking at me like, huh? What is that?
Blondie and Dagwood.
Yes.
They're still around.
I thought you tried that.
I know. I'll mention something on TV from way back there. What? What was that? Yeah. So this week, here's your assignment. Should you choose to accept it, offer more choices within limits this week. Again, give as many of those choices as you possibly can, and then find an opportunity to talk about an issue using those steps of problem separation. I'd encourage you, again, yours probably young for this, yours getting there, where they're pretty old for this, and adult kids works great for them too. Find one thing and find something safe. Don't tackle the hardest issue first, and try those steps. What do you feel about? Can I tell you what I think? Here are the facts. What do you think I should do if you choose this? Well, this is what I will do. And then see how that strengthens your relationship with your kids. All right, go enjoy your parenting this week.